Welcome to Lunch and Learn with us here at Action Coach in Birmingham. It's great to have you with us. It's also great to have Julie Cameron, one of my colleagues from Action Coach. Hi, Julie. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Steve. And yourself?
Yeah, great. Thanks. Good weekend, and hope you did too.
Yeah.
We're here. Hopefully, we're here. Well, we are here to talk about home learning, aren't we? Homeschooling, even dare I say, and working from home. And I'm going to hear from you, Julie, in a minute as a mum. Working at home, balancing, owning a business, working in the business, and homeschooling as well. I know we'll come on to it in a minute. I know you've gone back to homeschooling after a bit of a break as well, but we'll love to hear all about that in a moment, Julie. Yeah. For those who are logging on, perhaps on Facebook, on LinkedIn, or on the Zoom, it's great to have you with us. If you want to put any questions in the Q&A box on Zoom or in the comments box on LinkedIn or on Facebook, it'd be great to have your questions for Julie or myself as we go through on National Home Learning Day, which I didn't realize there was such a thing, Julie. Did you?
I didn't actually. It was a bit of an eye-opener, a bit of a shock. But yes, let's celebrate being at home and being at home day, working from home day.
Indeed. And haven't things changed? I was reflecting as I was looking forward to this webinar this lunchtime about how things were perhaps 10 years ago when I worked in the public sector and in other roles. And working from home really was, frowned upon. It wasn't a done thing. You had to be in the office, had to have that office presence, and you couldn't do your job properly if you were at home.
No, and I think even going back as little as 2, maybe 3 years ago, it wasn't deemed as the thing to do. And I know a lot of kind of people out there that were looking for that option to work from home really had to fight for it and really had to kind of put a really strong case for working at home to a lot of organisations to be able to do so. Whereas obviously now it's the norm at the moment.
Isn't it just? Now, I know we're going to talk about some of the pros and cons, Julie, of home working, but I just want to start off with a bit of a giggle, a very well-known clip from the BBC. So I'm just would like to share that just so we can remind ourselves of some of the challenges of working from home. And I hope my technology is not going to let me down here, but you may remember this, Julie, from about 18 months ago. Let's just have a watch.
Scandals happen all the time. The question is, how do democracies respond to those scandals?
And what will it mean for the wider region? I think one of your children has just walked in. I mean, shifting sands in the region. Do you think relations with the North may change?
I would be surprised if they do. Pardon me. My apologies.
What's this going to mean for the region?
My apologies. South Korea's policy choices on.
There we go, Julie. I think that's something that every single parent up and down the land can absolutely relate to now more than ever, having had the last 18 months of working from home. And it brings tears to my eyes every time I watch it.
Oh, it's so funny. But looking back over like the last year and a half, those first few weeks when we went onto Zoom or Teams or whatever platform you use, and kind of that was my worst nightmare. Potentially having my little boy at home that comes and kind of just interrupts, or there's shouts, there's somebody at the door, or mummy, can you just do this, mummy, can you just do that? And it was kind of like one of those fears that I had when I went onto meetings, how to look professional, and what you're doing when you're a business. But actually now it's the norm, and having him pop up, like this little head pops up here occasionally, and he knows more about Action Coach probably than I do. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is debatable, but he loves it. He loves meeting people. He loves saying hi to our clients. So it's and it's become normal.
Yes, I think things have become a lot more socially acceptable, haven't they? I think there's not much I haven't seen. There are some things I haven't seen, thankfully, on screen, working from home using Zoom and other platforms, but I've seen cats, dogs, children, all sorts in the background, and the postman knocks at all sorts of inconvenient times, dare I say. But when that clip was shot, I think it's probably about 2 years ago, before the advent of online working and home working as we do now. But it is the challenge for every parent, every member of every family up and down the country, isn't it? Especially if you're in you and I think it's fair to say, are both fortunate we've got dedicated spaces where we can work from home. But if you're in that shared space in the kitchen, in the lounge, you've got teenage children, you've got little ones like that. I love the fact that Nanny sort of crawls in and tries to pull the kids away in that clip. But it is a challenge for everybody. Space is a real challenge for working from home, isn't it?
It is. And I suppose one of that's firstly is the big thing to kind of look at when you're working from home is having that dedicated workspace for you, and making sure, as we all know, that when we go to the office becomes that workspace, doesn't it? You're sat at your desk, that is your workspace, you're there to work. And it's the same at home. And I suppose one of my kind of top tips, if you'd like to say it like that, is to make sure that you have that dedicated workspace within your home, whether that is in your kitchen, whether that is in a bedroom, or wherever, in that dining table, wherever it is, that becomes your workspace. So when you're there to work, and keeping that segmented, so that we can understand, I suppose it's that mindset shifts, that when you go and sit there, you're there to work, which is really key.
And I've worked in places in the corporate sector where it is a clear desk policy, so you have no advantage. And sometimes at home you can actually, where I'm working now, I've got a picture of the kids and I've got my notes beside me, my books that I left from Friday or Saturday working, and you can have that, even if it's a small area in the house, you can have some familiarity that perhaps you couldn't have in a shared office space. But I do accept, and what you're saying, there is a challenge in terms of finding that space in the home for some people.
Definitely. And I think it's also, you get very easily distracted at home. I think I would like to say, I don't think there's anybody that I've ever spoken to over the last year and a half that doesn't find it easier to get distracted at home, whether that's, I'll just put the washing on, or there's a knock at the door, or I'll just make myself another cup of coffee because it's easy and I can, or because it's very easy to, because you're in your familiar environment. I equally find it challenging. I normally shut the door and keep myself in the office, but it's very easy to just open it up and go see what everybody else is doing.
Yes, and it's very easy to sort of dip into Facebook or dip into do your Tesco shop online, and whereas although people I'm sure do that in the office space as well, you've got that subconscious, you haven't got somebody looking over your shoulder, and even if it's not somebody over your shoulder, you have got people around you wouldn't feel as comfortable doing those sort of things in the office space as perhaps you feel at home.
Or you'd keep it to your lunch break.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which equally goes back to that key about working from home, is making sure that you have that dedicated lunch break and you have dedicated break time, which you would take if you were at work.
Yes, I think that's, certainly talking on personal experience, one of my biggest downfalls is having those deliberate breaks. Maybe I went to the extreme of buying a dog to make sure I go and walk the dog, but it's getting out the house, isn't it? That change of scenery, going for a walk, having a set cut-off time at the end of the day, closing your laptop. And again, that would be different for everybody. If you have got family, then you've got those family pressures around you to make sure you switch the laptop off and go and look after go and get the children's tea or do their homework with them. But if you haven't, then it's easier to drift into an evening with a laptop as well.
Yeah, I think it's that it swings and roundabouts, isn't it, Steve? Do you know what I mean? I suppose, when we're at work, you go into an office or you go into a place of work that's out with your home, then you have those dedicated hours, and it's not very tempting to turn your laptop on when you get home because your laptop is at work, potentially.
Yeah.
With your laptop being here, it's very easy for all of us that all of a sudden your working time kind of impedes on what should be your downtime with your family and your family time. So it's very easy that it just kind of, I'll just do that and just open the laptop, because you're in that work environment still, because it's your home and that's where you're working from. So it's a challenge. It's and to us, as well as I do, we use a default diary at ActionCOACH and it's been key for me over the last year and a half, I'd say, to utilize it well and stick to it. And that comes down to, again, having that kind of ability to be able to stick to it, but equally it's a bit like planning, isn't it? A plan should be utilized and it should be flexible, and it's looking at it, what works, what doesn't work. And it's the same with your default diary, it's looking at what works, what doesn't work. Do you need more time? Are you taking 2 hours off in the afternoon? So therefore, where's that 2 hours going on to? The end of the day, early morning. And it's looking at what works for you within that home environment.
And I think it's equally important when working from home to look at the outputs and the results of your work, as well as the hours and the time you're putting in. I think it's an important aspect of it. I've got a question from Claire actually saying, how can we make sure we stay connected as we're all working remotely? And there's so many different answers. What's your answer to that, Julie?
Oh gosh, for me, I love to talk. So for us, as a team at ActionCOACH, to stay connected with us as a team, we have a daily meeting. a daily 15-minute, 20-minute, well,
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
half an hour, 45 minutes if we're too
Depending
busy.
on how much gossip from the day before.
Yeah. But we keep connected in that way. We make a point that we have that every day. Would we have that structured meeting if we were in an office? Probably not. But it's so key to be in contact with everybody, to make sure that everybody's okay, to check, what goals, what tasks they're doing that day, to make sure that we're all together, and equally with clients, it's exactly the same, making sure that we have regular contact, and making sure that that's booked in to the diary, to make sure that we stick to it, and we're definitely not going to put it off. We're not going to say, oh, well, I haven't got time today, I'll do it tomorrow. It's in your diary and you're going to do it. And to me, that's been fundamental over the last year.
Yes. And I think the other kind of contact I've missed, and I think we've been good at Action Coach certainly on occasions at doing it, is the social contact. We make sure we have those phone calls, but also the socials in the evening over a glass of wine. And we've had some very long quizzes, haven't we? And some shorter ones.
We have, but again, it's what works for you and what works for your team. It's making sure that people realize that they're not in it by themselves, that you are there. It's a wider support network, not just for work questions, but also, how are you feeling? Mental health has been massively impacted in the last year over COVID, and working at home there's some people that I think that have flourished working at home, and it's a really good environment for them. There's others that have really struggled with it. And I think it's recognizing both parameters, and hopefully for the future, recognizing that working from home can be just as productive, if not more, for some people, and letting them continue to utilize that kind of avenue for their working environment.
Yes, and I think it's just finding that right balance, isn't it? I certainly miss the conversations in the coffee, over the coffee machine and with the receptionists, etc. It's finding ways in which you can replicate but also keep in touch.
Yeah, and equally though, Steve, you could argue, are you actually more productive by being at home because you haven't got those distractions?
Absolutely.
It's that fine line, isn't it? So if you're one of those that enjoys going around and talking to everybody, actually productivity wise, you actually get more done because you haven't got that distraction. Or are you just one of those people that likes to be distracted, and so therefore finds things to do in the home, and actually it would make no difference whether you're at home or in an office environment, you're just going to get distracted, but you still get your work done.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
So. And on Friday, Julie, you and I know, I was doing a workshop Thursday, actually I was doing a workshop on DISC, on personality profiling. We're looking at different industries and how potentially different personalities are attracted to different industries. So high S, as I call them, sort of outgoing, relationship-based individuals that probably work well in sort of roles such as physiotherapy, occupational therapy, doctors, nurses, whereas those who are very high on detail probably thrive in industries such as scientists or lawyers or solicitors. And I guess equally those different industries people working in those industries might find it easier or harder to work from home, depending on who they are and what they're used to and what they need to do for their job.
Yeah, definitely. And equally, we have to, make it clear that there's some roles that you can't actually do at home, and you do need to go out and you do need to be in that office environment. I mean, there is an element that team meetings and things like that nothing takes away from being face to face, Steve. Body language at the moment, you can kind of see me from kind of chest upwards. I've got my pajama bottoms on, you don't know if I've got my slippers on, or you don't know how tall I am, you don't know whether I'm sat with my legs crossed or my arms crossed. Body language is key, and you don't necessarily get to see that on the virtual platform. You get to see my face, and basically can read people that way, but you can't necessarily read what's happening further down. So, are they engaged? Are they not? Are they sitting forward? Are they laid back? All of those aspects you can't necessarily see, especially when you've got a virtual background like I have. You don't know if I'm sat back in my chair or I'm just sat. You can't tell. And so therefore there is, if you're in a team meeting, for example, is everybody engaged? And equally, as we've always said, being on that virtual platform and having distractions like Facebook, LinkedIn, my mum's just messaged me, it's popped up on the screen, so instantly my eyes gone that way.
Yes.
So, but if we were in a meeting, it wouldn't happen.
No, and I've been in networking rooms over the last 12 or 18 months where people have sat there, put themselves on mute, and you can see them on their phone. And you just wouldn't do that face to face, would you? So I mean, we're sort of straying into the etiquettes of online working.
Yeah, we are.
But it all blends, doesn't it? And I think there are so many distractions working from, but there are so many advantages as well. I think depending on the work, depending on the role you're doing. But Julia, as a somebody who's done a lot of homeschooling, and you've just gone back to it, dare I say, your bubbles burst, which is an awful phrase to use, but for the right reasons. How have you juggled being full-time owner and manager of ActionCOACH alongside homeschooling? I can't remember how old your little boy is now, but homeschooling a primary school child at the same time.
Is this where I say badly? No, I'm only joking. I think realistically, nobody is perfect, and I would hate to be put on that pedestal out there, Steve, saying that I am a perfect example of how to run a business and homeschool. I've had my days where, the TV has actually homeschooled my child, should I say that out loud? But it is that juggling act, and it's something that I think that many parents understand and they get. We beat ourselves up about it all the time, but there are tools that have helped me. It's that kind of, for a classic example, so I've got a little boy, he's 7, so still needs that constant supervision where it comes to learning. He's not necessarily one to actually do it if you aren't sat there with him, so therefore we were getting up earlier to do an hour of work before he actually got up, so that therefore when his day started, we could do an hour or so of homeschooling, and then he would have a break, we would go back to work. And I say we because obviously Glenn, who's my husband, and I were taking it in turns. I'm very lucky and very fortunate in that instant that both of us could. We then definitely have a break for lunch. So before coming on here, obviously, like you say, his bubble at school has burst, and so he's at home for 10 days isolating. So I knew that was coming on here at 12, and so at 11:30 I'm like, let me make your lunch. So he's having his lunch while I'm on here. Yeah. So it's kind of having that forward planning aspect as well, and it's making sure that he gets everything done that he needs to do. So is it a catch-up time that we have to, if we have, say for example, Friday wasn't a really great day for us because I had back-to-back meetings, so did Glenn, so unfortunately Harry didn't get a lot done on Friday schoolwork, so we caught it up on Saturday. And it's understanding that and explaining and not beating yourself up about it. And I think that's key, but it's very much the planning aspect. And I know it's something we go on at ActionCOACH about planning, whether it's 90-day, 5-year, 1 year, all of that, but equally it works so well when it comes to working at home as well, and juggling those, it's not a secret. I take Harry to school and I pick him up, and so that's in my default diary that I do that, so I don't book calls in at that time. It's important to me and I do it every day. So it's just the same with homeschooling.
There's been two sides of it, hasn't there? I said there's two sides of it as well, being a single dad, with my two, they're back at school now, but it's given, I think, many parents, I talk to myself now, a great opportunity to get it involved in the children's lives, to get involved in their schooling, which I wouldn't have done a year, 18 months ago.
Or realizing what we don't actually know.
Realizing what I've forgotten. I mean, my children at that age where what they're learning is sort of more than the basic ABC. So I need to go and learn it myself before teaching them. But it has been a great opportunity for me personally to get involved and understand what they're doing, where they are, what their thinking is, to re-engage with dare I say this on behalf of a lot of dads maybe, to re-engage with their children's education, where typically dads will have gone out to work 9 till longer hours, and I was one of those dads that went out at 7 a.m, came home at 7 p.m, and my kids were just going back to bed at one time. So I think it has, with every aspect of COVID and lockdowns, there's been as many challenges as there has opportunities, hasn't there?
Definitely. And I think, you hit the nail right on the head. You look back and it's been tough, and it has been, and there's a lot of people out there, that have struggled and have found the challenges just immense, and overwhelming at times. But equally, having that extra time to spend with your child is a time and an opportunity that we never thought we'd actually have. they're supposed to be at school and they're supposed to be, educating. But, at the end of this last lockdown, I was like, you need to go to school, and I quite happily at the end of lockdown 1 last year, I was really nervous about sending Harry back to school, really nervous. And he was in year 1. So it was one of the years that had to go back. And I was really, really apprehensive. Whereas this time I was like, no, you need to go back. You need to be a child. You need to get muddy knees. You need to lose your coat. You need to, run around the playground and pretend and be a child. And I think, again, that's no fault of any parent out there. But it's just the way we're not teachers.
No, we're not teachers, and children need to have the opportunities that we had to run around, play, and interact with other children. I think that's
exactly
a phrase you and I have shared many times over the last 18 months of parental guilt. As we've got our own roles and our jobs to do, businesses to run, and that challenge of splitting our time with the kids and with work.
It is, but it's equally not just parental guilt, it's also business guilt, Steve. So here I am saying, it's really important to spend that time with child. But when you're running your own business, fundamentally, if you don't actually work in your business at that time or work on your business, then you're not getting the financial reward coming in. So if I took 3 hours a day out, actually that's 3 hours a day that I would actually be working on my business to grow it, to speak to clients, to, all of those aspects that you need to do. And so therefore you have that business guilt as well, that you're not actually focusing on something that you need to focus on. And again, that fundamentally, it all comes back to that plan and being really kind of strict with your time, and accepting that you're not perfect. And I think that is also key, because we all have that acceptance. We all want to strive for perfection. We all want to be able to do everything.
Yes,
fundamentally we can't. And we shouldn't put ourselves upon that pedestal.
Dare I ask you, Dan, and there's people I've spoken to, clients and friends over the last 18 months, say it's not quite 18 months, but that over the lockdown period, who have simply got bored of the same 4 walls and got to that blockage stage. Have you experienced that, and how have you got over that? Those 4 walls, and I say 4 walls metaphorically.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I think for us, we enjoy our home environment. We have a garden, we have the countryside is on our doorstep. I look out from the window at the front, and the sheep in the field outside. All of that. I'm very lucky and very privileged where I live, to have that environment. So going for a walk, getting that fresh air, trying to mix up what we're doing. So, on the trampoline one day, and sitting out the front, sitting out the back, going for a walk, all of those things that actually to have that downtime in between, fundamentally, if we were at work in the office, Steve, we'd have that downtime coming back from home, driving in the car.
Absolutely, yes.
That time to process, that time to kind of register what achievements we'd had through the day, the challenges that we'd have, that kind of thought. We all do it. We all need that time to have that downtime. And fundamentally, we don't have that when we're working from home. So therefore, it's important to take that time for us. And whether that's taking that cup of tea and sitting in the garden, getting that fresh air, or going and sitting in your lounge, or going to sit in your kitchen, or just changing up the environment, and I think DIY sales have gone through the roof, over the last year, garden sales, things like that, because people are utilizing their space at home. Mm-hmm. But it is change, variety, I suppose, is the key for me. Variety, moving your office around, you working in a different area, or, it's keeping it fresh, keeping it, real, I suppose.
Yes. And as I say, we're both very fortunate. We live in small villages where we can wander out and have a very quick change of scenery. But there are those who are, centre of Birmingham, who are in, sort of blocks of flats or smaller accommodation. I've got clients, and we've seen friends who are working from bedrooms, and it's hard, isn't it? So it is about making sure you change that environment. You go out for a walk, wherever that is, wherever that's possible. Perhaps structure your day with small breaks.
Yeah, breaks are key.
And even structure the kind of work you're doing as well.
But it's trying to mirror, I suppose, what we would do in an office environment, Mm-hmm. So if you would have a chat with somebody at 10:30, then put a phone call in to somebody at 10:30, to a friend, a colleague, a neighbour, whoever, if you were normally having your lunch at 1:00, then still have your lunch. If you go out for a walk at lunch, wherever you're working, then go for a walk for lunch, when you're out, at home.
Yes.
So it's kind of trying to break up your day into small, manageable chunks that you can cope with.
Yes.
So for me, I work by the hour.
Yeah. And dare I say, I can hear myself talking to my kids at this point, Julie, but, sort of try and get some downtime from the screen. I sort of now try to make phone calls rather than do everything on Zoom. If I'm speaking to a client, pick up the phone to them. So I'm not there looking at a screen. I can wander around the house with the phone in my pocket and have that conversation still, but I'm not staring at a screen,
It's so funny, Steve. It's so funny that you say about it, because actually Zoom has been a godsend to me. In some ways, and I've connected with so many more people over the last year and a half than I would ever have done if we were still without kind of experiencing this platform. Mainly because, obviously I want to take my little boy to school and I want to pick him up. So therefore, if I had a meeting in Birmingham, I would probably only book 1 or 2 meetings maximum for a day. Whereas obviously at the moment, I can book them in pretty much every hour.
Back to back. Yeah.
And I totally agree with you. I wouldn't book meetings in the office every hour. No, so why do I do it on Zoom?
It's that FOMO, isn't it? That fear of missing out that potential client by not putting them in the diary.
But it's so easy to book it in on Zoom or whatever platform you use, but it's so much of a challenge. So therefore, I would say again, it's making sure that your diary is spaced out, that you do have that break, that you do have time to process that previous meeting, that you do have time to type up your notes, that you do have time to drop them a quick email to say thank you, and you go on a networking event. And it's great because you all of a sudden, you're in a room full of 30, 40 people. And it's awesome because you haven't had to park, you haven't had to travel, you haven't had to do this. But then it doesn't have the benefits of the coffee chat, like you say. It doesn't have this, but again, it's that planning. So afterwards, making sure that in your diary, you have that half hour, you have that hour to make sure that you've got all your notes from all the conversations that you had. And again, it goes back to that planning thing, and it's just so key to make sure that you're realistic with your time, especially when you're working from home. Be realistic. Don't jam too much in. We're all keen to do it, but accept that things do happen. So, for example, Harry's bubble bursting last week. It happens. It does happen. So I'm half expecting him to come through the door now and be like, that gentleman on the screen that we watched. The chances are nobody would judge me for that.
No, and I have to say, Julie, since the schools have reopened, one thing I miss most of all is the hands of coffee that appear from the screen. You've seen that yourself, haven't you? A hand will appear with a cup of tea, But in some ways, which is lovely, but in other ways, that's another reason why I haven't got away from my screen. So there's pros and cons to that.
And equally, Steve, they need to go back to school to be kids.
Yes, not making daddy coffee. Yes, absolutely. They need to run and laugh and learn the stuff that we learned at school and subsequently forgotten. But we had the chance to learn it when we were that age, And yes, I'm not keen to go back to long division, long subtraction at all.
But then, I would ask that question to everybody out there. Are they enjoying working from home? Do they feel that they're more productive? Do they feel that they're more engaged with the company that they work with? Do they actually fundamentally want to go back into that office environment? If you could rewind the clock, or were you one of those that a couple of years back, was arguing the case of wanting to work so many hours from home, so that you could balance that kind of work-life balance?
Yes, maybe? Yeah. And what I've heard you saying so far, Julie, just to recap, and do ask any questions if you're listening to us on Zoom, on LinkedIn or Facebook, any questions for Julie or myself on working from home. But the overall message I think I've heard of what your experience, Julie, is about learning to be kind to ourselves, all of us. And to be flexible and not to hold our standards too high. Yes, we want standards to be high, but we've got to be kind to ourselves and accept that there are going to be challenges along the way.
Yeah, and I think, but it sounds very easy to do, Steve, but it's not, because we all kind of want to do our best and we want to succeed in what we're doing, whether that's, being a parent, whether that's being a business owner, we all want to do the best that we can be. And when you can't be, or when you are finding it challenging, it's hard on yourself. You beat yourself up constantly. You see, it's just, we have to be kind to ourselves. We have to, but put everything in place to make sure that we can achieve the most that we can achieve.
Yeah.
And that again, I'll say it again, goes back to planning and planning your
Absolutely.
days.
And I'll make you laugh, Julie. When you finish this webinar, I'm going to have a chat with Glenn about a conversation I had with him in December 2019 about doing online webinars.
Yes, I remember it well, actually.
And it was like, no, I don't want to do that. If I was on this group here, it's like, can I cope at the beginning? I don't want change. I don't, I like it I like seeing people face to face. And of course, then change was imposed upon us, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And it was a case of, and I think, I always say to people, the first few weeks of COVID and lockdown, and we were guilty of it as well. You put your duvet over your head and kind of go, no.
Well, absolutely. Without, that fear, wasn't it? The fear, the threat, the anxiety, we've all been there. And I think possibly some of us are feeling that way now about the world reopening, about going back into the workplace. And it is finding that middle ground, isn't it? And one of the questions that's come in is, for you, Julie, is home working here to stay? Or do you think it's going to be, we're going back into the office as we were before?
Ooh, see, I think that's is a really interesting question, actually. And mainly, I think it will kind of really depends. I don't think there's a straightforward answer to it, Steve. I think that home working will become more acceptable, and that if you put your case for wanting to be home, working from home, I think it would be accepted hands down without question. And I think that's the difference. And that's what has helped during COVID, is that it's not going to be, it's going to be more of a norm and more acceptable to do so. And that people aren't going to think that you're less productive because you are at home, which is only a positive thing. And I think it also will give people choices. I think people have now got the ability to choose more so. And it will be interesting to see statistics in 6 months' time to see whether people have actually come back. I know people that are itching to go back. And I must admit, we were having a conversation a couple of weeks back, and I was remembering my 20-year-old self that, come out of university. All I wanted to do was kind of work within that office environment, to experience it, to kind of, you see it on films, you see it on this, but you never actually get that life experience of working within that office environment, and actually was really looking forward to it. So, those 20-year-olds that want to work in that office environment, I think, will be key to go back. 40-year-olds like me that are realizing that actually being at home is more productive for me, then maybe not. I don't know whether it would be a generational thing, an age thing, I don't know. It'll be, but I do think it will become more accepting and more acceptable to work from home.
Yes, and I wrote a blog actually, which we'll tag in this webinar, and also worth going to our website, ActionCOACH.co.uk. ActionCOACH.com, either of them will take you to the blogs. And I was talking about working from home, and my conclusion was in that blog that the grass is always going to be greener on the other side. I remember days when I was working in the office, and I would long for a day when I could, no commute, I could sit at home, laptop on the sofa, and do my job. And there are other days now working from home which I long for a chat with co-workers and with you. And I'm not seeing you and Glenn for a while, but a chat around the coffee machine, or sitting having a Costa. I can still remember your order, Julie. Or the chocolate vending machine. And I think my take on it is that we need to find the working environment and the working pattern that helps us to be our very best. And for every single one of us, there's no set pattern, but it's finding what works us best, and depending on the project or the type of work, the type of industry we're working in. And I think there will be that hybrid, that blended model going forwards, won't there?
Yeah, and like I said, I think, when we do look back a few years ago, and we realised that there were so many, in particular, I said, working parents that wanted to be able, that ability to work at home, and it just wasn't the done thing. And if anything, that COVID has brought a positive effect in the fact that now it is. And so for those parents and those people that need that actually it becomes more acceptable, and they're not being penalized for it. And they're when job adverts go out there is an element of you can actually work from home, and that just opens it up to so many different people that before would have been alienated from it. And I think that is only a positive thing.
I think it's sorry, go on, carry on.
No. And I was also going to say, what's also kind of done from working from home is that you actually get to know people a little bit better. I think it's become that it has humanized us all a little bit more, that, you know, like that gentleman on that screen with his kids coming in the background and the nanny, you know, he's only human, you know, these things happen. He looked mortified, you know, whereas if that happened now, I can guarantee he would be probably laughing. You know, the guy from the BBC would probably go, oh, not to worry, don't worry about it, because that's how we've all evolved over the last year and a half, because people have become more accepting for people, you know, when these things do happen. And that, to me, again, is a more positive aspect.
And I think many large corporate organizations have realized the benefits from a mental health point of view, we touched on that earlier on, from a productivity point of view, of having that flexibility and realizing that environment has such a huge impact on results. Isn't it? We talk about that in one of our standard principles, the iceberg, here at ActionCOACH, and we look at, you know, the results and what's going on above the surface, below the surface, but surrounding all of that is environment. And when I talk about environment, Julian, and you do, we talk about environment in the wider sense, you know, who you're spending time with, where you're spending your time, the physical environment, and one person's productivity booster in life can be another one's absolute disaster in terms of, you know, their productivity. So it's getting the right balance for each of us. But I think the key message I would take from today and from a conversation with you and my experience over the last few months is think about how you work best, think about the environment in which you're in, what can you do to tweak it, and as you said, to plan and plan again.
Yeah, it is, and it's kind of recognizing what works for you and what doesn't. We're all individuals at the end of the day, and especially when it comes to, you know, growing your business and being that business person as well. You know, well, what works for your business? You know, what type of people, you know, are your clients? Do they want that face-to-face contact with you, or are they happy with you working from home? Are they expecting kind of to for you to have an office? You know, are they expecting, you know, it's all those kind of things that you have to take into consideration. And I suppose from my point of view, you know, will I be continuing to work from home? Yeah, you know, definitely. And mainly because it works for me, Steve. And that's what it fundamentally goes down to. It works for me, but that doesn't mean that I don't miss those office chats and miss sitting across a desk from somebody and kind of going, pass me a pen, I can't find a, you know, a post-it note, you know, have you got this, have I got that? And it's that instant kind of chat that I miss. You know, we become a lot more planning, you know, because we have our meeting, you know, it takes away the spontaneity, I suppose.
I think for me there's a lot more. It's about the information we absorb subconsciously by sitting next to each other, by working as part of a team. You know, speaking about a client, I might overhear the conversation. I might be able to relate that to you and talk to you about it. We might hear about something else that we're learning about online. It's that conversation that you absorb indirectly. I think it's a big thing.
Exactly. And, you know, one tool that we utilize at ActionCOACH is that we have we use an employee engagement kind of survey. You know, it is complimentary. So if anybody out there would like to, you know, has a team and would like to kind of ascertain their engagement of them within their company, then please do, you know, drop us a line. We're happy to set it up. But literally, it's a confidential questionnaire that gets sent out to all your employees, and it kind of gives you that gauge of how engaged they are with you, you know, the vision, the mission, the values, you know, do you know what you're doing? Do you believe in your leaders? You know, and all of those questions. But it really gives kind of that really good feeling. And we do it at ActionCOACH Birmingham, you know, and especially we did it before, we did it afterwards. And it's really interesting to see the results and how engaged we all still feel. But equally, it would be highlighting, you know, that if there is a time that we're not and why we're not. And I suppose it's a good thing to monitor and to kind of keep abreast of, really.
Yes, and again, I refer back to my blogs, Julie, and say if you want to go and read a blog all about employee voice being the best smoke alarm in any business, again, go to our website, which is on the screen there, and along with a number of blogs you might find interesting, our listeners might find interesting to read more about.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Steve, you know, but we both know that your employees are your best sales force. You know, if they're happy at work, they will tell everybody, you know, great company to work for. Have you not seen them? Check them out on this, check them out on that. Have you looked at their website? They're awesome, you know, great employer. They look after me, I'm valued, I'm respected, you know, all of those questions. So why wouldn't somebody want to buy from you if you're looking after your employee that much? But fundamentally, on the other end of the spectrum, if they're, you know, stood in the pub and go, oh, I hate work, it's horrible, don't want to be there, would they actually check you out? No, they wouldn't. So it's key. Keeping your employees happy is such a they become passionate, they become part of the business, don't they? You know, and we all believe in Action Coach Birmingham, we believe in what we do and where we are, and you know, and how we want to help people. But fundamentally, if one of us didn't, we'd want to know about it. So how do you know? By giving them a platform to be able to speak and listen. And it's about actively listening, not just thinking that you know it all. It's actively listening.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, so it is all about, you know, I'm sure we've got people listening to us this lunchtime who are working from home. So be kind to yourself, look after yourself. I would just love to leave with this key message, really. A coach that you and I have both, it's inspired us here at Action Coach. Jim Rohn no longer with us, sadly, but you know, he talks about never wish your life were easy, but wish you were better, and work harder on yourself than you do on your job. It's about looking after yourself, be kind to yourself. And making sure, as we've talked a lot about this lunchtime, about planning, talking, communicating, engaging with your colleagues, engaging with those who manage you, and making sure that you know, you have a day that and an environment that works for you, so you can get the best, you can be your best self every single day.
Yeah, exactly, Steve. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. You know, it's all about creating that environment that works for you. It's about planning. It's about you know, being realistic in what you can achieve, you know, within that day, and don't beat yourself up if the unexpected happens, you know, and everything has to change. So yeah.
And as Tiger Woods says, no matter how tough you think you are, whether you're at the very top of your career, you're midway through, you're just starting, no matter how tough you are, you can't do this on your own. And I think I speak on behalf of Judy, myself, and everybody at Action Coach. If today has touched a point you'd like to unpack further, something you'd like to discuss further with here at Action Coach, we have a range of support we'd love to help you with. Both Judy, myself, Glenn, any of the coaches happily offer you a free coaching session. We've got our 6 Steps Business Health Check, which again is free. We've got our Lunch and Learn on next Wednesday, this Wednesday coming. We've got Sammy Mubarak from MEX, who's talking all about how we can use video and drone footage and technology to promote our business. Looking forward to that. We've got our 30X program, a way to dip your toe in the water and see if coaching is for you. Some really good content in those videos, isn't there, Julie? Some
amazing
content.
I often delve into them, actually, and people might find that surprising, but I always think that every day is a school day, and sometimes just listening to one of them, you have one of those moments, don't you, where the light bulb goes off and go, oh god,
BFOs,
yeah,
absolutely, yeah. Blinding flash of the obvious way. We already know it. We're just reconnecting that information in a way we can make use of it. And there's 15 hours, and what I love about that program is you can do it in a time that works around you. We talked about flexible working earlier on in this Lunch and Learn, you know, 15 hours to work around you, your family, your work commitments as well. And then you've got an accountability call every single week. But if you've heard something today that you'd like to find out more about, please connect with us on Facebook, on LinkedIn. I'll put our contact details up on the screen one last time just to finish off. But
I was going to say, Steve, you see that little barcode that's on my screen?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, if you zap that, you'll get straight to my LinkedIn profile.
There we go. So you can zap Julie on screen. That being on Star Wars, you can zap Julie straight on screen and go straight to her LinkedIn profile and connect with her that way. And with myself, please do connect with us on Action Coach, on our emails, give us a call. But most of all, thank you, Julie. I know you've got a little one at home today, so thank you for giving up time to chat to us on Work at Home Day. I never knew there was such a thing. I'm intrigued to know if there was such a thing before the pandemic, but we'll have to go and Google that one. But
if anybody knows, drop us a line.
Yeah, it's great to know that working from home is an option now for many people going forward. It gives us that flexibility, that choice, and the ability all to be our very best. But thank you, Julie, for being your very best this lunchtime.
Pleasure.
We look forward to catching up with all our listeners on Wednesday at 12 o'clock with Sammy, all about video and drone footage in your business, how we can use video to best promote ourselves and gain those new clients. But until then, thank you, Julie. Stay well, stay safe. And to all our listeners, we look forward to seeing you on Wednesday at 12 o'clock.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Take care now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.